What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Stamina Nightblade. Stamina Nightblade is still among the top DPS classes in the game right now, whether that's Magicka or Stamina. The only class that really comes close to touching the Stamina Nightblade is going to be the Stamina Warden, and even then, Stamina Warden doesn't while it can match the Stamina Nightblade in single target DPS, the Stamina Warden does have the advantage of having a little bit better cleave. So while the Stamina Nightblade is pretty strong nonetheless, Stamina Wardens definitely kind of surpass them a little bit in cleave damage, so you'll often see the end trial groups bringing not just Stamina Nightblades but also Stamina Wardens for the additional cleave. So the Stamina Nightblade is still a very strong class to bring as a Stamina DPS in any sort of endgame environment. It is still one of the hardest classes to learn and to utilize to its fullest extent. Arguably the Stamina Warden is a little bit easier to play. So that's just something to keep in mind if you do intend on using a Stamina Nightblade as your main DPS character. So just like the rest of our build videos, we'll be going over our gear, our skills, our attributes, everything you need to know to basically recreate this build. We'll be discussing a little bit of the set alternatives that you can wear if you don't want to run these particular sets, and kind of depending on what DLC and expansions you have access to. Then we'll close things off by talking about a rotation, do a sample rotation, and kind of talk a little bit about different ways you can go about your rotation. There are some proponents of doing rotation certain ways, and I'm going to kind of show you the pros and cons of each kind of style of rotation, so to speak. And then we'll close things off with a 6-1 dummy par so you guys can get an idea of the amount of DPS you can pull on a Stamina Nightblade. So we're going to get started first here with our gear, and there are a few alternatives here, again, just depending on which DLCs and which expansions that you have access to. So our first, we're going to go over our monster helms. So we have Selene's here. Selene's is still a very strong monster helm set to use here, even though Relequen no longer procs Selene's. Selene's is still going to pretty much go toe-to-toe with Velidreth when it comes to DPS. Stamina Nightblades do still have a lot of melee damage on their front bar with surprise attack, so Selene still procs pretty often, and like I said, they pull pretty much neck and neck when it comes to DPS contribution overall. You can, of course, just swap it out with Velidreth's, but Selene's a little bit easier to get, so while Velidreth's does have some additional cleave and associated with it, Selene's is pure single target. You can just run Selene's while you're farming Velidreth's, because Velidreth's you do need to run Cradle of Shadows in order to get that Monster Helm set. For our first body set, so Stamina Blade sets and Stamina sets in general can kind of be divided into body sets and front bar sets. So body sets are basically sets that you wear on your body at all times, so that's armor and jewelry pieces. And then front bar sets are basically sets that you can only run on your front bar, so you have 2 weapons on your front bar dual wield, and then your other 3 pieces are body or jewelry pieces, although that can kind of vary a little bit depending on a specific set that you'll be running. So the first set is a body set. It's going to be Relequen's. Relequen's can be obtained from Somerset, so you do need that expansion in order to get this set. You can just farm it from Cloud Rest. I have the perfect version here, but you can go with the imperfect version. The difference is that max stamina bonus on the 5-piece, so that usually ends up being about around 1% DPS or so, so it's not going to be a huge loss if you can't get the perfect set at all. So this pretty much has to be on your body set. This is not a set that you can front bar here, because you do need to maintain the Relequen stacks in order to basically get the most out of the set. So if it drops off at any point because you're on your back bar for too long, you lose a lot of DPS potential if you're running Relequen. So make sure you are wearing Relequen on your body set. It is a medium armor set, so you can also run jewelry with this as well. For our front bar set here, we have Advancing Yokeda. This is a heavy armor set, so you will need to have weapons and jewelry in order to run Advancing Yokeda, and you will have to transmute your jewelry because it's a heavy armor set, which means it only comes in healthy. So you will need to transmute it to Bloodthirsty or Infused if you are going to be using Advancing Yokeda. So even though this is a set that can be obtained in the base game, you get it from Kra'gh, Hell Raw Citadel specifically, you do need to have Somerset in order to transmute the jewelry. So this setup is ostensibly only for people who have access to Somerset, that expansion there. If you don't have access to Somerset, we will talk about a couple of alternatives that you could use instead of this setup here. And then in terms of weapons, we are doing dual wield bow. That's just the best DPS right now. So we are going with double daggers here. Dagger axe will be a little bit better on a dummy parse because bleeds do ignore resistances, so that bleed from the axe is not affected by the target dummy's resistances. But daggers will scale better in a raid just because of the way your crit modifier works out with major force and everything like that. So do stick with double daggers. Dagger axe is still a perfectly fine alternative if you don't have 2 daggers. You want at least 1 dagger though, so dagger sword is also a good alternative. Dagger mace is probably the one. Mace is probably the only weapon that I would not recommend at all, just because the passive that you get from mace is pretty much subpar compared to the other 3 weapon types. And for our back bar, we're still running the Maelstrom Bow, infused with a weapon damage enchant. And for our front bar, both of our weapons are infused. We have a poison damage enchant and an absorb stamina enchant. Doesn't matter which bar it goes on, because Rending Slashes will proc both of these enchants now, so you don't have to worry about which enchant goes on which hand now. If you are going for a prismatic fight, so for example, Rakat in Veba, you will basically be replacing one of these enchants with the prismatic enchant. So if you replace the absorb stam enchant, you're giving up the sustain for prismatic. Giving up poison, you're giving up basically double damage enchants in place of that prismatic enchant instead. For our jewelry, we are running 3 Bloodthirsty, but you can go with Infused if you would like. 3 Bloodthirsty is the strongest combination. However, Infused is still a pretty good option as well. So if you want to kind of front load your damage a little bit, or basically kind of even it out over the entire parse or the entire fight, then Infused is the way to go. But Bloodthirsty is going to give you the best results, generally speaking. We have 3 weapon damage enchants. Even though Nightblade did see a sustained nerf in Murkmire, we are still capable of sustaining a full light attack rotation because we do have that absorb stamina enchant now, and we are running Artaeum takeaway Broth. For our armor, enchants, and traits, we're going with all divines here. I do have 1 heavy piece here with a max health enchant, and that's just to kind of offset the fact that we're using Artaeum takeaway Broth. I do like to have some additional health here for survivability purposes, but everything else is medium. We're not going 5-1-1. This is a 6-1 setup. All of our enchants are stam except for that 1 small health enchant on our one of our small pieces here. Now, when it comes to alternatives, like I said, this particular setup is pretty much only for people who have access to Somerset. So if you don't have access to Somerset, you will need to play around a little bit with your gear setups. So real quick, we're just going to go over kind of other potential set options that you can run here. So in terms of what you can get from the from dungeons, you can go with Leviathan and the body set. You can reasonably run this as a front bar set, but it is going to be weaker compared to the other alternatives that I'm going to be showing you guys, and that's just because the 5-piece is a static bonus, so you kind of want to keep static bonuses on your front on your body as much as you can, just because it doesn't carry over to your back bar compared to proc effects, which you do carry over to your back bar. So you can go with Leviathan on your body if you would like. The weapon crit does help out quite a bit when it comes to Stamina Nightblades because the additional crit damage here, but when it comes to medium armor sets that you can get from dungeons, that's pretty much the only set that's really useful that you want to get. So it's only really going to be Leviathan, and you can get that from Crypt of Hearts 1 or 2. Let me see if I can find, no, Master Architect. Oh, nope, just open that. So if you do have access to Vardenfell for the Halls of Fabrication trial, you can get War Machine. This is going to be a body set just because of the way our bars are set up. We have Incapacitating Strike on our back bar, so you do want this on your body so that way you can keep that Major Slayer going on your back bar as well. So if you are going to be running War Machine, generally speaking, you will not be able to necessarily pair it with the Relequen. You could double bar Incap and run War Machine on your front bar. That's one workaround people have kind of created. It is still a pretty strong combination there, but combining this with Relequen, you do double up on that Minor Slayer, so you're wasting one of your armor bonuses there. So some people just like to use War Machine and then another front bar set, so it's kind of up to you if you want to do that or not. If you don't have any of the expansions, you don't have Morrowind, you don't have any of the DLCs, you don't have any, you don't have Somerset, then you can just go with, where is it? Vicious Serpent. So Vicious Serpent, also known as Vicious Ophidian, is a Kra'gh set, so you can get this from any of the 3 Kra'gh trials, and it is a medium armor set, and this is going to be on your body. So it is a pretty nice alternative for those of you guys who just have the base game. It's not going to be as strong as Relequen or War Machine, just because those 5-piece effects on those 2 sets are really powerful, but Vicious Ophidian is very nice. If you're using VO and you're running an Absorb Stamina enchant on your front bar, with the additional reduction from that 5-piece, you might be able to sustain a full light attack rotation using blue food, as long as you have good group support with orbs and things like that. So that's a plus for Vicious Ophidian there. And finally, for overland sets, there are a few overland sets that you can get. So these are all sets that you can purchase off of guild traders. So these are available to anybody in the game, base game, or expansions. So the first one that I'm going to mention here is going to be Veiled Heritance. This is a heavy armor set, even though it says medium armor here. This is heavy armor, so I don't know why it's in the medium armor set, but it is heavy armor there. This is going to be a front bar set, very similar to Berserking Warrior, so you will need to transmute jewelry if you're going to be running this. So while you can purchase this from guild traders, you will need to have armor set in order to transmute the jewelry, and this is going to be a front bar set here, and that's just because, again, it is a heavy armor set here. The other set that you might want to consider running is going to be, if I can find it, Briarheart. Briarheart is a medium armor set, and you can find in Hrothgar, but because it is a drop set, you can purchase it off of guild traders. Because it's a medium armor set and it's a proc set, it can be on your body or your front bar set, so you can pick whichever one you'd like. It's going to be better off as a front bar set compared to a body set because it is a proc, so the proc will carry over to the back bar. So I like to have Briarheart out of my front bar if I am running it. So that's another option there. And now there is one set that I want to mention here that I don't have on hand to show you guys, and that's going to be Hunding's Rage. That's a craftable set, so you can buy it off guild traders or ask somebody to craft it for you. Very easy to obtain, and it has really good damage bonuses there. The 5-piece is 299 weapon damage. So again, it's very similar to the Leviathan in that it is a static set. It's static bonus, so you will want to have it on your body. So for those of you guys who have only the base game, I would recommend doing something like Hunding's on the body, Selene's Monster Helm, and Briarheart front bar. It's not going to be as strong as this setup, but it's still perfectly viable for pretty much all the content in the game. So that's all of our gear combinations. So let's go ahead and talk about our character sheet here. So we are Redguard. Redguards are still king when it comes to stamina races. That's just because of the additional passive that you get here, Adrenaline Rush, which gives you back stamina every 5 seconds whenever you deal damage with a melee attack. Super helpful for sustain, so that's really important there. Plus you get 10% additional max stam, which is the highest, tied only with Imperials, which you will need the Imperial Edition in order to use that race. Other potential races you could use are going to be Khajiits. They don't have any additional max stamina, but they do gain some additional crit chance, so they kind of make up for that there. Wood Elves are another option. They're probably going to be the weakest out of those 3 choices, just because they don't have a lot of max stam and they don't have additional crit. So they have 6% max stam and 21% additional stamina regen, which doesn't really come close to what a Redguard is able to do in terms of sustain. And then, of course, I mentioned Imperials earlier. They can be an option. You get 12% max health, 10% max stamina, so no real additional regen there. But if you are running Imperial, you don't have to worry about that health enchant at all. You don't have to worry about health. You can just put all your points into stamina and have all stamina enchants because of that 12% additional max health there. So in terms of attributes, we have 4 into health, 6 into stamina, and that's just to help us get to a decent amount of health, so that way we aren't falling over dead every other attack or something like that. You can, of course, put all your points into stamina if you'd like. If you are very comfortable with your stamina Nightblade, very comfortable with your survivability, that's perfectly fine as well. And of course, you can always move points from stam into health, so you can always shift points around. I would put no more than 10 into health. At that point, you're kind of giving up a little bit too much in terms of max stam, so you are going to be dropping your DPS by a little bit too much there. For our Mundus Stone, we're going with the Lover. Because of the changes to Sunderflame and Night Mother's Gaze, you don't have as much penetration as we used to, so we will have to run the Lover in order to make up for that loss in penetration. So with all of our debuffs up, so that's Torg's Infused Crusher, Elkosh, we have Lover, we have our, I already mentioned Crusher, Major Fracture, Minor Fracture, things like that, we will be able to hit the penetration cap if we're running the Lover. For food, we're running Artaeum Takeaway Broth here. This is just for the additional sustain. You can actually run blue food and sustain a full light attack rotation if you have very good orb support. If you don't have that good orb support, then I would not recommend running blue food. It's kind of up to you if you want to do that or not. I prefer gold food just because I like to have the additional sustain from that higher regen bonus there. Now for our bars. For our front bar, we have Killer's Blade, Rending Slashes, Surprise Attack, Relentless Focus, Rearming Trap, Flawless Dawnbreaker. Then for our back bar, Razor Caltrops, Poison Injection, Endless Hail, Leeching Strikes. We have Rearming Trap again, but we're going to be running it pretty much on our front bar here just so we can take out a global cooldown from our back bar. And then we have Incapacitating Strike. This is going to be our primary ultimate that we're going to be using regardless of what set we're running, really. Now going over our CP points, the cap is 810, which gives us 270 CP across each of the different constellation colors. Starting with our green CPs, we have 75 into Mooncalf and 75 into Tenacity. That gives 120 points to put into the remaining nodes, really however you'd like. I have 40 Shadow Ward, 40 Tumbling, and then 40 Warlord, but you can kind of divvy it up however you'd like. You can even push Mooncalf and Tenacity up to 100 if that is what you would desire. For our blue CPs, I do want to mention here that this is optimized around a fully optimized raid group. So we have Alkosh, good Alkosh uptimes. We have good Infused Torx Crusher uptime. We have good minor Fracture uptime from a Stamplar. So if you don't have those debuffs, then you're going to want to put a little bit more points into Piercing instead. So you can drop Mighty down to 56, Precise Strike Stormterge down to 56. That'll give you 8 from Mighty and then 10 from these two. So this gives you 18 additional points, which puts you up to 41. That's typically enough to kind of make up for any downtime on those debuffs. So if you have a fully optimized group though, 64 Mighty, 23 Piercing, 61 Precise Strikes and Thaumaturge, and 61 into Mastered Arms is what I personally have. The difference between, shifts here and there, you're talking about 1% here and there, so it's going to be pretty small difference overall. So you can just play around with constellations to get your best CP setup. Finally, our red CPs, I'm taking a balanced approach here, but depending on a specific trial, you might want to shift your red CP points around a little bit just to kind of maximize the mitigation that you need for that specific content. 81 Ironclad, 61 Thick-Skinned, 64 Hardy, and Elemental Defender. You can put points into Quick Recovery. You can put 10 here to get the Field Physician passive if you feel like you're going to be resurrecting fairly often. This is going to be more for like progression guilds than like, score running guilds or leaderboard guilds. But it is an option if you do want to take it. So you want to do Quick Recovery because that's the most useful out of all of these 4 nodes here. Alright, so that's pretty much all the build information. So now let's go ahead and talk about our rotation. So we'll just demonstrate on this dummy here. So back bar rotation is pretty simple and straightforward. It's pretty much what every single stamina DPS does. It's going to be Endless Hail, Caltrops, Poison Injection, and then you swap to your front bar and do your front bar rotation. And now the Stamina Nightblade does have one additional ability that you're going to want to keep up, and that's going to be your Siphoning attacks there. You do want to make, or Leeching Strikes I should say, Siphoning is the Magicka ability. I keep kind of mixing those two up. So that you will need to recast that. Even though you have that Absorb Stam enchant, you still want to maintain your resources a little bit. So just make sure to have that up at all times. So that will give us a total of 4 global cooldowns, typically speaking, on your back bar. So it could be Hail, Caltrops, Poison Injection, and then your Incap, or Hail, Caltrops, Leeching, Poison Injections. That's 4 global cooldowns, which means if we're running Advanced Yokeda, we kind of have to time it out a little bit here. Now I am going to be showing you guys a more dynamic rotation. I'm still practicing the dynamic rotation, so it's going to be a little bit wonky when I do the full parse, but I can show you guys what I mean with the dynamic rotation. Basically, it's very similar to the Magicka Nightblade. The concept behind the Magicka Nightblade is you want to prioritize your bow proc over pretty much everything else. So that's basically what the dynamic rotation is centered around. You want to focus on getting those bow procs off. You're not sitting on them for too long. And so that'll kind of break up your rotation a little bit. So you might need to break your back bar rotation to do a bow proc and then go back to your back bar and finish off the rotation that way. So this is just kind of a demonstration of like a rotation. Oh, I messed that up. So I always light attack on the front bar. Light attack on my front bar to kind of bring it back. Okay. So basically what I'm trying to say here, because I'm just trying to get it to the point where it's a little bit offset so I have to do a dynamic rotation, is when I go to my back bar here. So let's just do my back bar rotation. So when I want to go to my back bar, I do light attack, bar swap right into Endless Hails. So I'll just show you guys that again. Light attack, bar swap right into Endless Hail. And the idea behind that is you basically drop a global cooldown from your front bar this way, or your back bar, so that just makes it a little bit faster to get back to your front bar. So I'm going to just try again to get... Alright, I think I'll be able to do it now. So in this case, I'd swap, do bow proc, finish up my back bar rotation, and then go back to my front bar there. So that's kind of like the rotation. It's very difficult to just like do a dynamic rotation, just like demonstrate it. Just because of the nature of the dynamic rotation here. Then when we get into execute, you basically drop Rending Slashes. Maintain, I like to just maintain Endless Hail and Poison Injection. Some people like to maintain all of your back bar dots. But really the only thing that I drop personally is usually just going to be Caltrops. Everything else, Caltrops and Rending Slashes. Those are the two dots that I drop when we go into execute. I know that wasn't a very good explanation, but it'll make a little bit more sense when you see a full rotation there. Kind of what I mean when I talk about dynamic rotation. The most important thing though is if you're running Advanced Yokeda, if you're running something like Briarheart or Veiled Heritance, this doesn't really matter as much. But if you're running Advanced Yokeda, you just want to do, going into your back bar, you always want to do light attack, bar swap, Endless Hails. That just kind of cuts out that initial light attack from doing something like that. So we basically cut out that light attack and just go straight into the Endless Hail. So just speeds it up a little bit so that we can go back to your front bar to maintain your Advanced Yokeda proc. And again, you do want to prioritize that bow proc. So just because of the nature of doing the light attack, bar swap, Endless Hail, typically speaking, you'll only really have 2 or 3 light attacks on your back bar. So if you do the math, basically when you go to your back bar, if you have 2 stacks of your bow already stored up, then you will have to go to break your back bar rotation to fire off that bow and then finish off your back bar rotation that way. Again, I'll try to show you guys in the full parse, but it's very difficult to kind of explain the Nightblade rotation because it's just very dynamic. It's going to change. If I were to write it out, it'd basically be something like a 45-step rotation. So it's a lot easier to see in action versus like me explaining it through words. So with all that said and done, let's go ahead and do our rotation here. This is going to be a 6-minute dummy rotation. You're going to want to compare this parse to other stamina classes. 2 things to keep in mind. We do have Major Fracture and we do have Minor Berserk. So when you compare this to other stamina classes or melee classes, just keep that in mind that you are going to be a little bit inflated with the Stamina Nightblade just because not the only other class that has both of these buffs is going to be the Stamina Warden if you're running Bird of Prey on both bars. So if you are going to be comparing parses between different classes, just bear that in mind. Let's go ahead and get started here, and I will try to talk through it, but it's definitely very difficult to talk through a dynamic rotation. So remember, light attack, bar swap right into Endless Hail. We got to break a rotation, then finish off our back bar. Like I said, I'm not super fluent with this just yet. Let's see there, I could have gone to the front bar a little bit sooner there to get that bow proc off. and I am missing a few light attacks here. So you can see our sustain is very nice here with that absorb stamina enchant. I actually did not get that light attack off. So now we're going into execute. Most people do not actually fire off their bow procs and execute. Just because there's a little bit of a delay when it comes to the bow proc because they added a travel time to the projectile, so it's a little bit clunky. So a lot of people just drop the bow proc in execute. I'm one of those people. And then again, you want to maintain Endless Hail, Poison Injection, and your Rearming trap there in execute as well. So here's our parse here, 53.2k. I did have an earlier parse here that was 53.5, so that's kind of what you can expect to see here. Berserking Warrior, about 90% uptime. I've seen this be up around 94, 95, depending on you know, how well you're able to maintain it. So that's kind of a good. This is not bad, but it can definitely be a little bit better here. So it did drop 2 times, so I did have to rebuild those stacks twice here. The Berserker enchant on our back bar, because Endless Hail will now proc it, you can pretty much expect almost 100% uptime on that. And this is what I'm saying with Minor Berserk. We have pretty much very good uptime, pretty much 100% uptime of Minor Berserk, and not all classes have this, so our parse is slightly inflated just because of that, compared to other classes, I should say. Other than that, you can see here Endless Hail, Relequen still top of the DPS counter. Full light attack rotation, so light attacks are up there. Killer's Blade, so this is kind of what I'm talking about when I mean we don't use the bow proc and execute. Killer's Blade typically hits for harder, and you can weave it a little bit better than with the bow. Bow max was only 41.7k versus Killer's Blade, which was 58.3k. So you still just want to use only Killer's Blade as your spammable. Don't worry about the bow proc or execute at all here. And the Absorb Stamina Enchant actually does a fair amount of damage here. So it doesn't quite match up to all the other dots here, but it does do a pretty nice amount of damage now that it is now considered physical damage here. Plus we also get some nice stamina back. We get about, 175 stamina back. So just helps out to sustain and pretty much completely negates the nerfs that were made to sustain to Nightblades and Murkmire. So that's it for this build video. If you guys have any questions, I know I wasn't very clear with the rotation, so please let me know if I can clear it up for you guys in the comment section below. Hope you guys found this informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.